Okay, so I've got everything set up here, and I'm just a hobby trapper. I trap a lot, but I don't do it full time, just for a living by any means. So I've slowly been stacking up traps, buying all the supplies needed. But I don't have a proper fleshing beam or anything like that. So this is just a mink drying board, which they're really thin. So I just put a block of wood behind that, and then put a C-clamp on it. Um, it's very far from ideal. That it's a drafting table base, so it's kicked out at an angle a little bit, which helps. But it's real low, so it's just a back killer. Anyway, I'll just show you again. Basic tools, some C clamps. You could make a board if you've got some 2x4s laying around. But so we've got a nice case skinned or tube skinned squirrel here. I grabbed a nice fat one for you, so that way you guys can get a good idea of how to do this. So go ahead and stretch your squirrel down onto that board. And these have been salted. I skinned them and then just salted them. And the salt I get, I'll show you a picture here in a minute when I'm not gloved up, but it's just canning and pickling salt, Morton salt. And I get about a 4-pound box for $1.75 from Walmart. So I usually buy like 10, 20 bucks worth. So I went ahead and salted these twice, and now we're gonna get to them. So if you're new to trapping, fur handling, again, you might not have everything you need all at once, but for fleshing a squirrel, it's a great, squirrel's a great way to start just because their skin is so thick. Rabbits are a little bit harder to start with. So yeah, you can use even a spoon from home. What I have is just a bracket that I found. It's a garage door bracket, and I just put an edge on one side of it, and the other side's a little dull still. But it works pretty well. So I'll go ahead and just start from about here and work on the middle of the board. Don't work on the sides too much. If you work over here, you might tear a hole in the hide. So just stay in the middle. And when you're done with that section, you can just pull up the hide and rotate it, stretch it down, and keep moving. So just come in at an angle here and put a decent amount of pressure. And you can see we got it started there. And just make sure you always have your pelt, your hide on there nice and tight. If you get wrinkles in there and you come across it with your fleshing tool, there's a good chance you're going to rip into the hide. So just keep it nice and tight. You can get creative with your fleshing tool. I mean, you can buy one. Most fleshing tools I've seen are pretty ridiculous for a squirrel, so something like this works great. So you can see we've gotten down right where we need to be. And I'll usually just take this just about down to the bottom, just rotate all the way around and get all that off before I knock off the bottom fat. So. Like that. Just snug that down at all times. Critters always seem to have a lot of fat under the armpit. They get stuck there when you're skinning them, so I like to just grab the arm once you've got it nice and tight, flatten out the arm, fold it back, kind of get this started. And And this tool works phenomenal with it having an edge on one side and then a little rounded on the other side. The sharp edge will help you get started, and then you can always flip it over to the more dull side to work the rest of it, at least while you're learning. Don't tear anything. Okay, looking good. You can see if you get those little wrinkles, if you don't keep adjusting it, you're gonna snag somewhere and tear it. And the arms, again, just fold them pretty much flat. I left these really long. I actually pulled the arm out and just ripped it off. You can cut them a lot shorter. Less real estate to deal with. And just keep making your way down. You can fold this up too. Okay. Rotate around. Tighten down. Start at the back. Work the next section. And look at that, we made it all the way around. Real simple. Getting around the head can be a little tricky when you're first getting into this. Whatever you're gonna be using your pelt for, a lot of people don't use the head. I mean, if you're gonna put it up as a wall hanger, definitely pay a lot of attention up here. If you're using it for crafts or for garments or whatever other reason, you're usually only going to use from about up here, and you don't use any of the arms. So you can get rid of those, the arms, cut them shorter when you're skinning. The head, leave it on until you're done fleshing. As you can see, it just keeps everything in place. I have some that don't have a head, and you just have to clamp it down at the top. But the clamp gets in your way, so it's easier to leave the head on no matter what. Even if you're not going to use it, you can cut that part off after. Okay, good enough there. Careful on the ears if you're going to keep the head. Make sure you pay attention in the arms, even if you get what I was saying, there's a lot of fat there. You can still see that still a little bit of material to get off of there. So work the arms. That looks good. Okay, now the very bottom part, depending on your fleshing tool, you can just grab right here and cinch down if you want. If your fleshing tool allows you to use one hand. And just reposition, work in the middle of the board. Makes your life easier. and work all this all the way off the edge, or else you're going to end up with a hard, crusty edge here when you go to tan it. And it's really hard to break. Longevity-wise, you don't want it there anyway. So just get rid of it. Scrape right off to the edge, over the hair. Might pull out a couple hairs, but as you can see, it's knocking off all the flesh, but it's really not affecting the hair much. You sit there and work at it over and over, you're probably going to damage the hair a little bit. But we're doing good here, so just keep working down. And you'll learn the pressure to use. Careful when you get to the tail. This tail, I got a little nick in there in this particular one, so sometimes you'll get a little nick or might narrow. You might narrow down a little bit. You don't want to get too crazy when you're pushing that fat off, so usually stop about here. And then stretch it, and then kind of where that tail is, you can just push to the side of it. Get that going over there. And got a little hole in there. It's not the end of the world. Just makes it a pain in the butt to flesh in there, but you could even cut off right here if you wanted to. It'd probably make it easier. All right. All right, so reboard. All right, so looking pretty good. All right, so we got the legs good. I lied, now we have the legs good. We have that leg good. That leg has the hole and is good. All right, guys, I'm pretty happy with that. So, body's all done. Hard part's done. The tail is best fleshed out with a spoon. It's just real narrow, so and we got that nick in there. So just be real careful and get that all out. Work little sections, and some of this too I'll come in afterwards once I've washed it and it's dried out a little bit. Take that back once that's dried. Before I've washed it, I'll come in, and you can use sandpaper, you can use an X-Acto knife, you can use your hands, your fingers, and just rip off any extra little pieces that are remaining there. Again, any of that remaining fat, any of that kind of stuff is your enemy. I mean, you want these, going through all this trouble, you want to make sure these pelts last, and the hair doesn't slip, and they don't rot or something funky happen over time. So just take your time. It looks good. So there we go. And I'm just going to throw this on a board and let it dry out a little bit, like these other ones that you saw earlier. But that's it, guys. You could do this whole squirrel with a spoon. If you're only doing like one squirrel, then a spoon works perfect. If you're doing like a dozen more at a time, it can be a little tedious with this, and it's a killer on your hands. So you can get creative. Like I said, I just grabbed a bracket from the garage. It was an old garage door opener, and put an edge on it. And once you start getting familiar with flushing more, you're going to be looking around and you'll see tools, and you'll think, hey, that'd be a great flushing tool. So that's all there is to it, guys. Flushing a squirrel using basic tools.